chapter 7 about the cause complex. And you can follow in the book at page 215. So here, this is the general idea for you to see what we're going to study about today. So we'll talk about intercausal relationships. There are two main kinds, interdependency and logical semantic relation, and there's subclass. So after this lesson, you're going to know how to divide a sentence, how to analyze the clause complex, and how to use these signals, the alpha, beta, and 1, 2, and the symbols correctly. So first of all, my part, I'll talk about the clause complex and the sentence. Types of relationship between clauses, and the first two types are paratexts and hypertexts. So what is clause complex and what is sentence in the view of functional grammar? So first of all, clause complex, we use it as a constituent of grammar, and the only grammatical unit above the clause is the clause complex. For sentence, it is a constituent of writing, or to make it easier to understand, it is the part that stands between the two full stops, right? The sentence. And in the analysis of written text, each sentence can be treated as one clause complex, with the simple sentence or the one clause sentence as the limiting case. So we only pay attention to the clause complex that has more than one clause here. So moving on with the next part, types of relationship between clauses. So as I have shown you earlier, we have interdependency or texts and logical semantic relation. Interdependency, or we can say quan hệ phụ thuộc lẫn nhau. Logical semantic relation, logic về ngữ nghĩa. Right? And for the first one here, interdependency, we have two smaller parts. Hypertexts. It refers to the clause complex that has the dependent element and the dominant element. For paratexts, we'll talk about clauses with equal elements. They are free from each other. They don't depend on each other. For logical semantic relation, we have expansion and projection. And this part will my friends will tell you more about this one. So for interdependency, hypertext, we use the Greek letters to stand for this relation. And for paratexts, we use the number 1, 2, 3 to represent this relationship. For logical semantic relation, the first one, expansion, we have some symbols like this. For expansion, we have elaborating, expanding, and enhancing. And for elaborating, as you can see in this one, for elaborating, one clause expands another by elaborating on it, restating, specifying, commenting, or exemplifying. For expanding, you can see something that is adding some new element, giving an exception, or offering an alternative. And the most common one we see is and, or, the conjunction, right? And for enhancing, you have some words like so, yet, then, or but. And for this one, one clause expands another by embellishing around it, qualifying it with some circumstantial feature of time, place, cause, or condition. For locution, this is about projection. So for projection, we have two kinds, locution and idea. For locution, we use the double quotes mark here, the idea with single quote. And you can see here, for locution, when we, it's like in reported speech, right? When somebody says something, so one clause is projected through another, which presents it as a locution, a construction of wording, like I hate you, he said. So he said here is the locution, right? And idea, the most common word we see is think, right? So one clause is projected through another, which presents it as an idea, a construction of meaning. This is basic types of clause complex. Let me show you. So here for the this is paratactic. It is the relationship between equal elements, đẳng lập, right? So for the first one, elaboration, you see, John didn't wait and he ran away. For paratactic, we use the number 1 and 2, 1 and 2, right? Elaboration, it means you explain something, right? You restate, specify, comment, or exemplifying. So this one we use 1, and for elaboration we have the equal mark like this, 1 and 2. For the second one, extension with the addition mark, right? The plus mark. So we have John ran away, the first one, and Fred stayed behind, second one. So I think we'll talk about this later when I'll show you the more detailed one about the paratactic and hypotactic. Wait a minute. So we'll talk about interdependency. For this one, as I told you earlier, hypothesis, we refer it to the binding of elements of unequal status. So we have one part that is the dominant, and the next clause or the next part is something that that is dependent on the first part, that is the dependent. And we use alpha and beta for this relationship. For parataxis, câu đẳng lập or cú đẳng lập, right? Some elements, the clauses are equal, and they are represented by numbers 1 and 2. For any clauses with this kind of relationship with the interdependency, we can call it as clause nexus. And for clause nexus, we have two clauses: the primary clause and the secondary clause. For parataxis, we have the first part as initiating, and the second part as continuing. For hypotaxis, we have the dominant and the dependent. Now let's have a closer look at each type. So for hypotaxis, as I told you earlier, we have dominant and dependent elements. So look at this example. I would if I could. And for this sentence, I would is the dominant clause. If I could is the dependent clause. for this one, we have the first part as the alpha and then the second part as the beta. So just like that, we have the sentence, when you need me. This is the dependent part, and we mark it as the beta. I'll be back. This is the dominant part or the primary clause. We mark it as alpha. For this sentence, you can see the example of the sentence in your textbook, in a book, page 217. So I don't mind if you leave as soon as you finished. This is the first part, as long as you're back when I need you. This is the second part. And for the first part, it is the primary clause. The second part, it is the secondary clause. So the alpha is here and beta is here. So this is the this is the thing that I take from the book. So for the first part here, the primary clause, or we can say the head here, it has I don't mind if you leave, and then as soon as you finished. It's a long clause with smaller ones. So for this head, we can divide it into 3 smaller parts. Like I don't mind is the head. If you leave is the modifier. As soon as you finish is another modifier for it. And for the second part, the secondary clause here, as long as you're back when I need you. We also have 2 parts here, 2 clauses here. So we have the head is the first one, as long as you're back, and the modifier is when I need you. So as you can see, we have alpha here. So the first alpha is for the bigger picture here. I mean, the primary clause, I don't mind if you leave as soon as you finished. That is the first alpha, and the next alpha is the primary clause in the I mean the sub-primary clause. Like I don't mind in this clause. Yeah, so we have the structure like this. And this is called nesting. It means that in the clause we have in a secondary clause or in a primary clause, we have we can divide smaller. We can divide it into smaller parts. Another example, as you can see here, she took her umbrella in case it rained when she was leaving. And we have the dominant or the primary clause, that is, she took her umbrella in case it rained. And the secondary clause or the dependent element is when she was leaving. So we can put the mark like this. And as you can see in the primary clause, we can divide it into smaller parts. She took her umbrella is the primary clause here, and in case it rained is the secondary clause. So we have another alpha and beta here, and the structure for the whole sentence, we can say something like this. So the alpha, and alpha, beta, and the beta here. The next type of interdependency, parataxis, it refers to the linking of elements of equal status. we have initiating clause and continuing clause. And initiating clause is the primary clause. Continuing clause is the secondary clause. So in this sentence, John ran away and Fred stayed behind. We can see that the first part, John ran away, is the first one, and it is called initiating clause, and we put the number 1 here. For the next one, we use number 2 for it. For this sentence, John came into the room and sat down. Lucy stood in the doorway and Fred waited outside. So you can see John came into the room and sat down is the first clause, and it is initiating clause or primary clause, and we put number 1 for it. The next one is number 2, and we have number 3. So we have 3 clauses. And for the initiating clause here, you can see John came into the room and sat down. We have and here, right? So basically we can divide it into smaller parts. So we have John came into the room is the first part of number 1, and sat down is the second part of number 1 here. So we have 1, 1 and 1, 2. The first part is came into the room. The second part is sat down with the same subject as John. So the structure for this sentence, we can say, we can write something like this: 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3. Another example. So I would if I could, but I can't. So the first part is initiating clause. The second part, continuing clause. So we have number 1 and number 2. But you can see in number 1, we have I would if I could. So if here, it is it represents hypothesis relationship, right? Hypothesis. So we have to divide it into smaller parts. And for hypothesis, we have alpha and beta, right? So we have the first part, number 1, alpha, and number 1, beta is if I could, and then but I can't. So the structure is 1 alpha, 1 beta, and 2. In conclusion, we have to for the interdependency. For the hypothesis, quan hệ phụ thuộc, right? We have alpha and beta. For parathesis, quan hệ đẳng lập and but, or we use the number 1 and 2 to represent it. Yeah, and that's how you use alpha and beta, 1 and 2. Yeah, and that's the end of my part. So the next.
And there are 5 parts in our presentation, and Miss Wen has tell you about the 3 third one. So it's my part to tell about the 7.4, elaborating, extending, enhancing, 3 kinds of expansion. And in my part, there are 6 main parts. And now we come to the first one, elaboration. Chi tiết hóa. As Miss Wen has said, paratactic, we have the notation, the number 1 and 2. And in this part, we use the equal, dấu bằng, ký hiệu 1 bằng 2. And now we go to the first part. The paratactic, the first one, we use it to exposition, to explain something. And we have some indicator like or, rather, in other words, that is to say, and IE. The first.
I knew it. We used to have races. We used to have relays.
Yes. So the main clause, or both of them are main clause, and they have the paratactic relationship, and we mark the first clause number 1 and the second clause number 2. Okay.
Number 2, your face is the same as everybody else has. The 2 eyes, so nose in the middle, mouth under.
Okay, and as you can see, the second clause give more exemplification for the first clause. I'm sorry, but I think that I skipped the first one. Sorry, exposition. And now, Ting, can you help me to call another one?
The first one,
Yes,
example.
clock.
Yeah, that clock doesn't go. It's not working.
Okay, and they have it's not working is explanation for the first clause, that clock doesn't go. And thank you, Miss Thúy. The next victim, please.
Duy ơi, it's your turn.
Duy, Mr. Duy, the next victim.
She wasn't a show dog. I didn't buy her a show dog at a show. I didn't buy her at a show dog.
Yes. The author want to explain why she wasn't a show dog, right? Okay. Next victim, please.
Chị Mai.
Each argument was fatal to the other. Both could not be true.
Okay, thank you. Now, the second one, exemplification. I have just talked about it. And now we move to the third one, clarification. And we have some indicators like in fact, actually, indeed, at least, blah, blah, blah. And the first example, please. Miss Mai, can you choose another one?
The first one?
Miss Mai, can you choose one of our member to read aloud the first example for me?
Okay. Miss Huan.
Yes, Alex could only look puzzled. She was thinking of the body.
Okay, so the second clause, it clarify more about the first clause. Okay, and the next one, please, Miss Huan.
Miss Bảo Thư, please.
Hello, Miss Thư.
Yeah, I'm here. They weren't show animals. She just had them as pet.
Okay, thank you. And now we move to the next one, hypothetic, phụ thuộc. And we use, as Miss Wynn has said, for the hypothetic, we use the signal alpha and beta. And in elaboration, we use the mark equal, dấu bằng. Okay. And for the finite clause, we have the clause with which and its domain is the whole. Which clause may modify for the whole or some part of the primary clause, and that clause is more than a nominal group. Nominal group là một cái cụm danh từ. Thì cái which này nó phải thay thế cho một cái phần cho câu mà phải lớn hơn một cụm danh từ. So we read the first example. If I ever did fall off, which there's no chance of blah blah blah. So can anyone tell me which part of the first clause does which modify for? Mr. Can you call me another name?
Mr. Duy.
Mr. Yui, please.
If I ever did phone out.
Okay, so which it modified for the whole first clause, right?
Modify for the whole first clause is which
You mean?
there no chance of.
I quite don't get your idea. So, but I think that which.
And can you ask it again? Can you ask your question again for me?
Okay. Which part of the first clause does which modify for?
If I ever did phone out.
Okay, so the whole clause, right?
Yeah, the whole clause.
Okay. I have the same idea. Okay, so we move to the next example. From then on, we started winning the prizes, which turned out to be very easy. Can you call me a name, Mr. Yui? Mr. Vin, please.
Yes. From then on, we started winning prizes.
Yes.
Yes.
So which
turns
modifier?
out- I think the first clause.
The whole first clause?
No, we started winning prizes.
Yes, we started winning prizes. I think so too. And now we move to the next one, the finite. And now we go with the which, that, who, or whose. And its domain. Sorry, I have some typo here. Domain is just a nominal group. And the first example, she was hard at work on the white kitten, which was lying quite still. So which here modify for? Mr. Vin, can you call a name for me, please?
Yeah, Miss Gum, please.
Okay, so I think which is modified for white kitten in the first clause.
Thank you. And the next example, can you call me a name, please?
Queen, please.
Queen. Miss Queen.
This means the commission to raise the charges on these lines to the point where they would pay for themselves. This sentence is too complex for me. So which he may refer to these lines?
These lines?
Or the charges? The charges.
Yes. I think that the charges on these lines.
Oh, okay.
And the next one, please.
I will call Miss Mai again.
Thank you.
Who's determined for Parliament?
Okay, thank you. And the last example.
Miss Tố. Is Miss Tố here? Miss Me.
I'm here, but what is the question, please?
Okay, so what is who modify for in the last example?
The mouse.
Okay, the mouse. Thank you. And now, the first part in hypothetical, when and where, and its domain is some expression about the time or the place. I just read the example. The first few days are a time for just adjustment. When the kitten needs all the love and attention you can give it. The second one, have you been to Wensleydale, where the cheese comes from? Okay, so I have bold and underline the when and where and the word it modify for. And now we come to the non-finite, cú vô định. and its domain is about one nominal group, là một cụm danh từ, or some larger segment of the primary clause up to the whole clause. And the first example, I worked for a local firm at that time, selling office equipment. It's my own invention to keep clothes and sandwiches in. The third one, the hairy coat holds a layer of air close to the skin, isolating the body against the charge in the outside temperature. There was a real fire there, blazing just as brightly. So I have highlight. Okay. And now, this is the table from the book, from our book, but because it's too blurred, so I type it again. It's the table 7.3 categorized extension. Okay, and you can read this table. Oh, sorry. Read this table to know about what is extension or extending or something else. Okay, and about the extension paratactic, we move to the second one, extension mở rộng, and to the paratactic đồng đẳng, we use the number and the plus 1 plus 2, ký hiệu 1 cộng 2, and we can see that they use the coordination and nor or but. For the addition one, we have I breed the poultry and my husband looks after the garden. We extend the first clause by the second clause. Okay, so we mark 1 plus 2. And the second example, I don't remember who is the last one. So can you choose another one, please? Miss
Tố will choose the next
one.
Miss Yu.
Okay, Miss Young. Did I just figure that? Mr. What are you calling me?
Miss Young, where are you?
Yes, Miss Young. Yeah.
Wake up.
No, I'm just wondering, is she talking about my name? Right, so do I need to read this or what? Miss Hai? What am I supposed to do? Read the sentence?
Yes, read the sentence.
Okay. They don't give any instruction, nor would it help if they did.
Okay, now we use the indicator nor in the second example, and the third one. Can you your name?
Sure. Minh Thư, please. Miss Thư.
So I don't give any instructions now. Would
sorry, Miss Thư, the last example, please.
Yeah.
We like that.
Yeah, we like that breed of dog, but we feel we weren't in a position to own one at that time.
Okay, thank you. And I have list here too. In addition, also moreover, on the other hand, is the paratactic addition, also accompanied by cohesive expression. Okay, and the first one is about the variation, sự thay đổi. Miss Thư, can you choose another one to read out loud the first example?
Miss Ngọc.
Oh, Miss Ngọc.
Yes. Don't stand there chattering to yourself like that, but tell me your name and your business.
Okay, it's about the changes, right? Okay, the second one.
Wait, please. Miss Nguyệt, please.
Yes. They did a good job, only they were so slow about it.
Okay, thank you. And the last one, please.
Miss Dean.
Yeah, I would have let you know, only I couldn't find your phone number.
Okay, and I have listed down some of the words. Not have you, sorry. Have you know more about the variation in the paratactic? Instead of except for on the contrary, conversely, on the other hand, and alternatively. And the next one, the hypothetic infinite clause. We have the conjunction whereas or while, and we also have except that, but for the fact that. And can you please read aloud the first example for me? Miss Ting, can you choose another one?
Yes, Miss May, please.
Yes.
Yes. Can you read aloud the first?
The first one, right? Why
yes.
his disappearance was proof that he hadn't wanted her. The 500 pounds he had on the ring was indication that he had wanted something else.
As you can see, we don't see any. We have the conjunction while to that the two clauses have the opposite meaning. Okay.
A contraction. Yes. Right.
Yes. Thank you. And the second one, please.
Rothschild Wales, with a population of a mere 560, has a doctor and a surgery in the village, whereas many places in the other twice that number are sometimes lucky even to have a quickly surgery held by a visiting daughter.
Okay, thank you, Miss Mee. And I have to remind you that in a hypothetic, we use the alpha and beta and the plus. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and more example, the executioner, the king, and the queen were all talking at once, while all the rest were quite silent. And the last one, he kept on pretty well, except that he had a habit of now and then falling off sideways. Some more indicator besides, apart from, instead of, other than, without. And the first example, Miss May, can you choose another one, please?
I choose Miss Ting.
Miss Ting again?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Apart from attracting business, it will undertake research and development for the two companies.
Thank you. And the second one, please.
Okay. Maintain adequate forward momentum without letting the wheels spin.
Okay, thank you. And now we have besides, apart from, instead of, other than, and without. Ting, can you call another one, please?
Yes, Mr. Vin, please.
Okay, I'm here. Instead of revising my notes for the exam, I lay down and went to sleep.
Okay, thank you for your voice, Mr. Vin. And can you read the rest?
Yeah, okay, the last one. You won't get rid of it other than giving it away.
Okay, thank you. And now I have typed the table from our book to show the principal markers of extending clause here. It's easier to see. Okay, and you just look at this table and know what is it. And now the third one, enhancement, tăng cường. We also have the paratactic and hypotactic. And about the paratactic, we use the number 1 multiplied 2 for đồng đẳng. Okay, and some marker are the conjunction then, so, for, but, yet, still, and the conjunction with and then, and there, and thus, and so, and yet. And at that time, soon afterwards, in that case, in that way, and some other conjunctive like therefore, however, nevertheless. And now we come to the table, principal types of enhancement. they have listed down all the principal type, and here is that meaning. Okay. And now the example about the temporal, thời gian. Mr. Vinh, can you call another one, please?
Yes, I would like to call Mr. Duy, please.
Mr. Duy, please.
Okay. So what?
The
What am I
first
supposed to
example.
do? For example, right? It is
Yes.
she cat. Now I shall have somebody to talk to.
Okay, thank you. And the second one, please.
The three soldiers wander about for 1 minute or two, and then quietly march off after the orders.
Okay, and you can see I mark the first floor number 1, the second floor number 2, and the multiply. And now about the spatial, không gian. Mr. Duy, can you call another one, please?
I call Miss Ngọc.
Miss Ngọc.
Oh, from the beginning, Miss Hải, right?
Yes, Alice looked up.
Okay. Alice looked up, and there stood the queen in front of them.
Okay. And about the manner?
Keep on subtracting the difference, and in that way, you will arrive at the correct figure.
Okay, and the last one?
She likes to survive, and so does he.
Okay, thank you. And about the causal, conditional, nguyên nhân, điều kiện. And we have many small branches about the cause. We have the reason and purpose. For example, Alice didn't want to begin another argument, so she said nothing. Okay, it indicates the reason why. And the second one, Alice was standing there with her hands ready, for she was any moment expecting him to fall. It's the purpose, right? Okay. And the condition that show the positive. The ends of his mouth might meet behind, and then I don't know what would happen to his head. About the negative one, we have otherwise. I like to follow up one line at a time. Otherwise, there's a muddle. And the last one, the concessive. It looked good nature. Still, it had a very long claws and a great many teeth. The last example, evidently Humpty Dumpty was very angry, though he said nothing for a minute or two. And here, I'll also type the principal markers from the book for the paratactic enhancement. Okay, you can see the marker here and its meaning here. And here is the another table, but because it is too long, so I just capture from the book.
Okay, just show your friends so that if they want any detail or more detail, they can read the books. Okay?
Okay.
Don't worry much about, your mentioning in passing, because we do not have time. You can only introduce something to your friends. Okay?
Thank you, thank you. Okay, here, and now some example about the hypotactic. And I just remind you that we use the alpha, beta, and the multiply. Okay, for some finite clause here. And they have point out some verbal conjunction provided that seeing, supposing, granted, say, nominal, in case, in the event that, that, blah, 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 adverbial, so as long as, so as far as, and so on. And they are alpha, multiply, beta. And we come to the third The fourth one, expansion clauses that are not explicitly marked for any logical semantic relation. Các cú bành trướng được đánh dấu rõ ràng về mối quan hệ logic ngữ pháp. So, he left the house, closing the door behind him. We can also say that he left the house and closed the door. This is the extending. And for the second one, I work for a local firm selling office equipment, or we can also say I sold blah, blah, blah. Okay. And this is elaborating too. And we keep going with the rest, some other sentences. And we move to the last one, embedded expansion, bành trướng bị bao. And here we have the type of embedded, rank shift, các kiểu bao. And now you can see in the S post modify hậu tố bổ cố, hậu bổ tố cú. Sorry, we have the finite, the house that Jack built. This is a clause, right? A non-finite, the house. We are omitting that, so we have being built by Jack, and we have the phrase the house by the bridge. And about the head clause, chính tố cú. About the finite, we have what Jack built. Non-finite for Jack to build a house, and the phrase by the bridge. And the same as in the adverbial group. And okay, and I have listed some of the word too as the indicator. And that's and the last one about the acts. So we can see in the example, having a wrong idea is of course deplorable, but attacking other people for having views is more deplorable. So we have a verb, some action being maybe the subject of the clause, right? Having a wrong idea is deplorable. And we mark it 1 and plus 2, and here is some sub branches. Attacking other people, we mark it alpha, and for having views, we mark it beta. And the process nominal group, we have some example. The building of the bridge presented a problem. And about the projection phóng chiếu, we have the sentence, we saw that the boats have been turned. So if we say, I can see the boats turning, this is about an event. The boats are turning, so we say about a process. And we can say it's a single complex phenomenon, a macro phenomenon. We can also say, I can see that the boats have been turned, but we cannot say, I can see the boat having been turned, because it's illogical, because we cannot see a past event. Okay, and thank you. That's all about my part. And now please welcome Miss Thanh Quyên.
Okay, thank you very much.
So yeah, good morning.
I have stop sharing. Good afternoon.
Yeah, everyone. Good evening, teacher. Yeah, so hope that you are still alive. So Miss Nguyen has talked about 1, 2, and alpha and beta. This is the part that Miss Nguyen has covered. Interdependency. And Miss Hải talked about elaborating, extending, enhancing, those kind of cộng, nhân, bằng. And this is my part, locution and idea. I will talk about double quotation mark and single quotation mark, là dấu phẩy, hai phẩy và dấu một phẩy. Yeah. So now let's begin our presentation. Okay, so in terms of the relationship between clauses, I will divide protection into 3 main types. Parataxis, equal, là đẳng lập. Hypertaxis, dependent and dominant, which means phụ thuộc, and embedding. An example for you guys to understand. In parataxis, I can say Caesar was ambitious, says Brutus. So this one is independent. Hai câu này là hai câu gọi là độc lập với nhau. But for hypertexts, I say Plutarch says that Caesar was ambitious. Well, in this sentence, Plutarch says is the dominant clause, the alpha. But that Caesar was ambitious is the dependent clause, the beta. Yeah. And for embedding, you can see that Plutarch's assertion that Caesar was ambitious. Well, actually, this is not a relative clause like Ms. Hai has presented. It's a little bit different. So that Caesar was ambitious is embedded within the noun assertion. Yeah. But in terms of meaning, I will divide protection into three main types: reports, ideas, and facts. So altogether, we have to walk through 7 points like this according to the book. Number 1, we will talk about quoting, which is direct speech in our traditional grammar. Number 2, reporting, which is indirect speech. Number 3, we will learn how to distinguish reporting and quoting. Number 4, we come to a new type of sentence, offers and commands. Number 5 is free indirect. I will skip this part, number 5, very quickly. Number 6, embedded, and the last one is fact. Now let's come to the first one, quoting, direct speech, câu trực tiếp. So, well, as I have told you before, this one is parathesis relationship, đẳng lập, and this is a verbal process. For example, I have this sentence. She keeps saying to us, I stay up till 12 o'clock every night. So, I use 1 and 2 for these 2 clauses because they are independent, right? And I use the double quotation mark here, phẩy phẩy, to refer to the verbal process because we have the verb saying. So this is a verbal process. I use double quotation mark. And the last point I need you guys to remember is to understand the word protecting and protected. Protecting clause is a kind that we say, someone say something. Yeah, that part we call the protecting. But the protected is like the contents of the protection. Like what did they say? Yeah. Another point you need to remember is the word wording. For example, in this sentence, I'm not so sure is a protected clause, but reply the fact controller is a protecting clause, right? And it's still the verbal process because reply is a verb of saying something. And I'm not so sure we call it a wording, And Dr. Halliday has distinguished the protecting clause in spoken language and written language. In spoken language, well, actually, there is no signal for you to know that the speaker is quoting something, right? So it occurs as a direct observation. So if you want to tell the listener that I'm quoting something, you have to keep repeating the protecting clause. For example, this one, he said, look, he said, I really think you've got something here, he said. So you can see that I keep repeating the phrase he said, and he said to notify the listener that I am quoting something. Yeah. But normally when we speak, we don't use this kind of repetition, right? So Dr. Halliday concluded that the fact that a passage is protected may be lost sight of. It means that the listener didn't notice that. But when it comes to written English, it's very clear. We have a punctuation, double quotation mark and single quotation mark, phẩy phẩy và phẩy, to notify that I am quoting something. So the quotation mark will be repeated, yeah. But the protecting clause, like he said here, only used once after the first clause. For example, oh dear, he said, I am a silly engine. I use only once, he said, I don't repeat it, right? And he said is placed after the first clause, oh dear. Yeah. So now let's come to the table with all the verbs that Dr. Halliday said is normally used in quoting. You will look at it in more detail later. I will send you the file. And let's come to part 2, reporting, indirect speech, câu gián tiếp. So this one is a dependent and dominant clause, so I will use alpha and beta to signify that. Mental process, and let's talk about this later. Yeah. So, for example, Dr. Single Man always believed that his patient would recover. So the first part is the alpha, the main clause, while the second one is the beta. And I use only one quotation mark here, một dấu phẩy đơn. Why? Because I'm talking about mental process with the verb believe. So believe here belongs to the cognition type. So we use only one quotation mark instead of double for the verbal act. Okay, so in total, we have paratactic 1 and 2. Với đẳng lập dùng 1, 2 để diễn đạt. Verbal, we have double quotation mark. For hypertactic, we have alpha and beta. Với phụ thuộc dùng alpha và beta để diễn đạt. And mental part, we only use one quotation mark. Yeah, like this. Okay. Let's come to the next one. Here are more examples for you guys to understand. So for example, A. Mary said, I will come back here tomorrow. Said here is a verbal process, right? And this is a direct one. Câu trực tiếp. So I use 1, 2, and double quotation mark here. But for the second example, Mary thought she would go back there the next day. Well, thought here is a mental process. You think in your mind. So I use only one quotation mark. And this one is indirect, câu gián tiếp. So I use alpha and beta, right? Now let's come to number 3. So how can we distinguish between quoting and reporting? Now let's look at a conversation. A shopkeeper will say that it doesn't work, it's broken. You have to get it repaired. And the elderly said, what does he say? And her grandson replied, he says it needs mending. Well, actually, it needs mending is not exactly the same as what the shopkeeper wants to say, right? So we can say that it's a kind of reporting. So reporting only focus on the gist, the main idea of the message. It don't repeat as the wording. Still remember wording? Wording like the real word that the speaker say, yeah. And another point to remember, in quoting, the protected element is independent. So we use 1 and 2 with double quotation mark because said here is a verbal act. And in reporting, we use alpha and beta because the protected element is dependent. If you report something, it's become indirect, right? And you still remember the traditional grammar exercise that we do when in high school, like the teacher asked us to turn direct speech into indirect speech. So this point proves that the two quoting and reporting always fully match. So we have like a short summary table like this. So for the verbal, we have double quotation mark here. And mental, we have only one quotation mark. To quote something that is independent, like she said, I can, we use 1, 2. And for the process, she thought I can, we use 1, 2. But for indirect report to speech, we say she said she could, alpha, beta, and she thought she could, alpha, beta. Right? Well, actually, Dr. Halliday noticed that the publishers do not allow the author to follow this principle in their works. So when you read book, normally the author will use only one quotation mark like this, I can and I can like this part 1, instead of using double quotation mark for the verbal and single quotation mark for mental. They don't use it because the publisher don't allow them to do so, which is quite interesting. Okay, number 4, offers and commands. Now you have to get yourself familiar with the 2 new terms, proposition. Proposition includes statement and questions, and proposal include offers and commands. So offers and commands have 2 types, direct and indirect. For example, she will go, will you be quiet? This is a direct one, so I use 1 and 2. And double quotation mark because go here like you say it aloud. And I use 1 exclamation mark here, dấu chấm than, to signify that this is an offer or yeah. And in indirect one, like he threatened to blow up the whole city. So this one is indirect, so I use alpha and beta. And I also use double quotation mark here because threaten is you say it aloud, you don't think it in your mind. And dấu chấm than, yeah, to notify that this is a command. Well, finite means that you can see the tense. Will you be here? You can see the tense. But to blow up, you cannot see it. So there is non-finite. It is non-finite. Then, and here's more example here. So I will like briefly go through it. Said, asked, threatened, suggest, and suggested are all verbal acts. So I use double quotation mark for all of them. And in the last three parts, the proposal, ba cái cuối cùng, so I use the exclamation one, dấu chấm than, because this is a command. And to blow up and talking it over is a non-finite. To verb here, in terms of systematic functional grammar, we call it perfective. And talking the gerund, the verb in, we call it imperfective. But you can also use it as a finite if you use it with the modal verb like should, ought to, must. So we can show the tense here. And it's a finite reported clause. Okay. And they all indirect, so I use the beta. Nó là câu gián tiếp. Okay, so this is the table, the verb. You can see it later. Now let's come to free indirect. I use 3 examples to help you guys understand. Number 1, am I dreaming? Trill wonder. Wonder here is a mental process. So I use only 1 quotation mark. And this is direct, so 1 and 2. And if I report it back, Jill wondered if she was dreaming. Well, this one is alpha and beta, and again, 1 quotation mark only. But when it comes to free indirect, you can see a very awkward one. Was she dreaming? Jill wondered. And Dr. Halliday concluded that free indirect is a kind of combination between direct and indirect. So in terms of the structure, you can see that was she dreaming is still an independent clause. That's the reason why I use 1 and 2 instead of alpha and beta. And in terms of mood, it's still a question. An interrogative, it means a question, right? But the time and the subject is changed to was she instead of am I. So it's a kind of indirect. Yeah, so free indirect is a kind of combination between the both. Now let's come to the number 6, embedded locutions and ideas. Locution mean verbal, 2 phẩy, and ideas mean mental, 1 phẩy. So let's look at the first example. The assertion that Caesar was ambitious. Well, assertion here is a noun, but actually it's derived from the verb assert. So we call it the protecting element anyway. But that Caesar was ambitious is a protected element, and it modifies, it's a qualifier for the noun assertion. Yeah. So Dr. Halliday has shown like the whole table of all the nouns that we can derive from the verbs that used in protecting clause, and you can like see it later. Yeah, very common one like statement is a noun from the verb state, right? Thought is a noun from the verb think. Yeah. So we call it embedded if you use it as a noun. Now here are more examples, and I would like to speak in Vietnamese so that you can understand me clearer. Dạ thầy với lại mấy bạn cho phép em nói tiếng Việt cho nó dễ hiểu. Cái dấu ngoặc vuông 2 lần như vậy là ý là đây là một câu embedded. Nếu mà dấu 2 phẩy là đây là một câu verbal, còn phẩy là câu ID mental, nãy mình đã phân tích rồi ha. Dấu chấm là câu statement, chấm hỏi là câu question, còn chấm than là câu offer and command đó. Thì ví dụ đầu tiên nè, cái the assertion that such an effort bla bla bla, thì cái that such an effort này là một dấu là một câu statement, cho nên mình sẽ chấm than chấm chỗ này. Rồi đây là assertion lại là một câu verbal, cho nên sẽ là dấu 2 phẩy. Còn cái này là ý là embedded, cái that gì đó là một câu embedded. Hay là cái câu B1, một la mã B1, cái the argument, thì argue là cũng là verbal act, cho nên vẫn sẽ là 2 phẩy. Rồi đây là câu hỏi where the inflation bla bla bla, thì mình sẽ là đặt dấu chấm hỏi chỗ này và embedded 2 dấu ngoặc vuông. And Dr. Halliday also noticed some kind of finite and non-finite. Well, actually, there are only 2 non-finite in the 6th example here. The first one is this one, to protect real wages. So to verb here is a non-finite. The second one is the last one, of getting money. So of getting money here is a non-finite too. And the rest is finite. You can see the verb, it's called finite. Yeah, the tense, sorry. So the next part, the last part, fact. Fact is a protection without process of saying or thinking, which means that there is no sayer and censor in the process. For example, that Caesar was dead was obvious to all, but actually that Caesar was dead here. We normally call it a noun clause in traditional grammar, right? It can function as a nominalization on its own, or it can use as a qualifier to modify for the noun fact. So this sentence can be rewritten into this one. The fact that Caesar was dead was obvious to all. So that Caesar was dead, he modified for the noun fact. Yeah, so we call it fact. There is no sayer, no censor here. No one say that. Because there is no participant, so a fact can be protected impersonally by using the subject it. It's not a subject anymore. Dr. Halliday called it a subject placeholder. Yeah. We can use a relational process to report it, like it is the case that, or we can use impersonal, mental, and verbal, like it is said to be the case that, or it seems, it is thought to be the case that. Yeah. And this is the 4 subclasses of the fact now. If you use simple fact, we have did this, we have modality, we have did this, and proof, and needs that. Yeah, you can see it later. And the last point, Dr. Halliday wants to distinguish what is a fact and what is not a fact. For example, this sentence, Mark Antony thought that Caesar was dead. So thought here is a mental process. So we use only one quotation mark here. And this is an alpha and beta, right? Well, that Caesar was dead here cannot be preceded by the fact. Nobody say Mark Antony think the fact that. Nobody say that, right? So this is not a fact. The second point, that Caesar was dead cannot be turned into a noun phrase like Caesar death. Yeah, we cannot say that. And number 3, we can quote this one as Caesar is dead, thought Mark Antony. So obviously this one is not a fact. But when it comes to the verb requested, like the mental process, you request something. People do say that in real life, right? You request something. So we can use it as a noun, Caesar death, and you can place the fact that in front of that Caesar was dead. So it is a fact. And we cannot quote something like Mark Antony requested Caesar is dead. It's very awkward. Yeah. So in total, we have a table like this. Oh, no, this table is too big. Let's come to a smaller one. Yeah, this. So for verbal, you use double quotation. For mental, you use one quotation. If it is a direct speech, câu trực tiếp, we use 1 and 2. Vậy là sẽ là 1,2 cho cái phần verbal và 0,12 cho cái phần mental. Nếu mà cái phần protected đặt ở phía trước, I shall fell, he thought, we say 0,12. For free indirect, I think we shouldn't pay attention to that. And for indirect, là câu gián tiếp thì mối quan hệ sẽ là phụ thuộc, cho nên mình sử dụng alpha và beta chỗ này. Nếu mà verbal act thì là alpha phẩy beta, còn nếu mà gọi là mental act như là was afraid to determine, mình sẽ dùng là alpha phẩy beta, mình sẽ dùng 1 phẩy thôi. Và embedded là cái dấu ngoặc vuông này thì phẩy ngoặc vuông là dùng cho verbal nói lớn lên như là question rồi instruction. Còn nếu mà fear determination trong đầu mình thôi, mental mình sẽ dùng 1 phẩy thôi, và đương nhiên sẽ có cái embedded là là 2 ngoặc vuông. Yeah. So that's all for our presentation.